Cora Delacroix had been on the job 6 weeks when she first understood what it looked like for a room to be wrong about a person. It was a Saturday evening in late spring, and the Harwick Garden estate was dressed for a wedding. 200 candles floated inside the grand ballroom, and the Whitmore family had taken every table from the east wing to the garden doors. Cora stood at her post by the ballroom entrance, clipboard in hand, heels already aching, watching the lobby fill with guests in gowns and rented suits. She was still learning names. She was still learning which doors to hold open and which ones to guard. The woman came in through the main entrance at 6:15. She was not what anyone expected to see. She wore a navy wool skirt and an ivory blouse, plain and well-made, and she carried two things, a slim garment bag folded over one arm and a manila envelope held against her side like something she had carried a long way. She moved without hurry. Her gray hair was pinned at the back of her neck. Her shoes were low-heeled and dark. She did not look lost, and she did not look as though she was searching for approval. She simply walked toward the ballroom doors, unhurried, as if she had been here before. Cora watched her and made no move to stop her. Darren Mull did. Mull was the floor manager that evening, 12 years with the Colston Hospitality Group, the kind of man who had learned, somewhere along the way, to size up a guest in the length of a glance. He had a good memory for faces and a particular talent for reading rooms, and he prided himself, Cora had heard him say in her first week, on knowing which guests belonged and which ones needed redirecting before they found their own way to the wrong place. He crossed the lobby from the registrar's table with the brisk, proprietary air of a man who considers himself the last word in these matters. "Ma'am." His voice was not unkind. It was simply efficient in the way a closing door is efficient. "This function is a private event. The Whitmore party has reserved the entire East Wing." "Yes," the woman said. "I know." She kept walking. Mull stepped in front of her. Lightly, no contact, just presence, the way a person stands in a doorway to indicate a conversation is expected. "Do you have a registered invitation?" "I don't need one," she said simply. Something shifted in Mull's expression then, a narrowing Cora recognized from her first week, the look he gave caterers who arrived late and vendors who came to the wrong entrance. It was not quite contempt. It was something quieter and more settled, the certainty that he already knew exactly what was happening here and that what was happening was a misunderstanding he was about to resolve for everyone's benefit, including hers. "I'm afraid every guest requires registration this evening," he said, louder now, just enough that the registrar and 2 junior attendants near the east corridor could hear him. "If you don't have a card, I'll need to ask you to step to the side." "I've been a guest on this property since before it had a name on the sign," she said. Mull's chin came up. "Ma'am, the estate is operated by the Colston Group. It has been for 22 years. If you'd like to make a general access inquiry, our concierge desk is open until 8. He turned to signal the junior attendants. That was the moment Cora wanted to step forward. She felt it, the small pull of something not sitting right, but she was 6 weeks in. She held her clipboard and watched. "I'm not going to the concierge desk," the woman said. She had not raised her voice once. "Then I'm going to have to ask one of my staff to help you find the lobby exit." Mull gestured to one of the junior attendants, a young man named Perez. "Her bag and her envelope to the service corridor, please." "Ma'am, we can arrange a car if—" "Don't touch my envelope." Her voice did not rise. It did not waver. It simply arrived in the room like a door closing, and something about the way it landed made Perez stop with his hand not quite extended. "Don't touch the envelope," she said again, and she turned very slightly toward the ballroom entrance, not to walk away, but because someone in the gathered doorway had heard the commotion and stepped out to look. A small crowd was forming now, wedding guests curious at the edges, and Mull's neck had gone red just above his collar. "I have to say," he said, still managing his tone, still performing reasonableness for the room, "you don't present as a registered guest for this function, and I'm not in a position to." "You're in every position," she said quietly. She set the garment bag on the nearest chair. She opened the manila envelope. What she pulled out was not a business card. It was not a printed invitation. It was a single folded document, thick-papered, the kind of paper that costs something, cream and heavy, with 2 signatures across the bottom in blue ink, one from a man named Edmund Voss and one from the original chairman of the Colston Hospitality Group, dated 41 years prior. She held it open and turned it so Mull could see it clearly. Cora was close enough to read the first 3 lines: a founding share certificate, naming Edmund Voss as a partner of original record in the Colston Group, with a beneficiary clause transferring his full 22% stake to his daughter, Margaret Elaine Voss, upon his death. Underneath that, on a separate page clipped to the back, was an addendum to the original property sale agreement, a permanent right of presence clause, granting Edmund Voss and his direct heirs unrestricted access to every Colston-operated property for the duration of the company's operation. 2 of the wedding guests near the ballroom doorway had drifted closer. A woman in a silver dress had stopped pretending to study her phone. The registrar had gone very still behind her table. "Mull, read it." Cora watched his face. The color that had been red in his neck traveled nowhere, it simply stopped there, and his expression did a strange thing, like a man who has stepped onto a floor he expected to hold and felt it give. Margaret Voss did not say anything for a moment. She let the document do its work. Then she said, "I'd like to speak with Sandra Okafor." Okafor was the Colston Group's regional director. Cora had met her once, during orientation, a composed woman in her 50s with a measured voice and the air of someone who did not rush because she had never needed to. She had spoken for 10 minutes about property standards and guest relations policy, and Cora had written down nearly every word. Mull, who had gone very still, said, I can place a call." "You don't need to," Margaret said. "I already sent her a message from the car." She glanced at the envelope. "She's been expecting this visit for 3 weeks." It was 18 minutes before Sandra Okafor walked through the main entrance with a leather portfolio tucked under one arm and a Colston Group senior counsel 2 steps behind her. Cora did not move from her post. She was not sure her legs would have cooperated. Okafor crossed the lobby without pausing at the registrar's table. She went directly to Margaret Voss, extended her hand, and said, quietly, professionally, without theater, "Mrs. Voss. I'm sorry you had to wait." 19 minutes, Margaret said. She wasn't counting for drama. She was simply accurate. "Yes." Okafor's eyes moved briefly to Mull. "I'm aware." She took the document from Margaret's hands, handed it to the counsel without looking at him, and turned fully toward Darren Mull. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The lobby had gone quiet in the way that rooms go quiet when everyone present understands that something has already been decided. "Mr. Mull," Okafor said. "You've been with this company for 12 years, and in that time I believe no one ever sat you down and explained that the right of presence clause in the original Harwick deed is written into the Colston Group's founding charter. Mrs. Voss holds 22% of the company's founding shares. Her father built the original structure on this land before the Colston name was attached to it. That document has been on file in our legal records since before this lobby was built." She paused, and the pause was not dramatic, it was simply the pause of a person who was being accurate. It was incumbent on every senior manager at this property to know that. It has been for 22 years. Mull said nothing. His mouth opened, and then he made the correct choice and closed it. "You will step back from floor duties tonight," Okafor said. "Human Resources will contact you Monday morning for a formal review. Until that review is complete, you are on paid suspension." She glanced at the counsel, who was already making a note. "There will be a written apology prepared for Mrs. Voss before she enters the ballroom. It will be signed by me on behalf of the Colston Group, and it will be entered into the permanent property record." She looked at Mull one more time. "You're dismissed for the evening." Perez, the junior attendant who had stopped with his hand not quite extended, was standing near the corridor doorway. He looked at Cora. Cora looked at him. Neither of them moved. The written apology took 4 minutes to prepare. Okafor wrote it by hand first on Colston letterhead and then passed it to the counsel, who typed the final version on his laptop at the registrar's table and printed it on the property's formal stationery. 2 copies, both witnessed. Cora's own name was one of the 2 witness signatures, because she was the nearest staff member when Okafor looked up and asked, quietly, if someone available would sign. She wrote her name in clear block letters. Her hand did not shake. She was surprised by that. Okafor signed both copies. One went into Margaret's envelope alongside the founding certificate. One went into the property file. The counsel had the board notification drafted before the senior partner table in the ballroom had finished the first course. Margaret Voss read the apology once, folded it, and placed it in the envelope alongside the founding certificate. She did not perform satisfaction. She did not look for the room's approval. She picked up her garment bag from the chair, nodded once to Sandra Okafor, and walked through the ballroom doors into the warmth of 200 candles. The evening proceeded. The Whitmore family gave their toasts. The band played. Outside the ballroom, in the lobby that had gone quiet and then found its noise again, Cora Delacroix stood at her post for another 2 hours and thought about what she had seen. Not the apology, though that had been clear and formal and correct. Not the document, though it had been plain enough to read in 30 seconds. Not even Okafor's voice, though that had been worth studying. What she thought about was the woman, the way she had kept walking when Mull stepped in front of her, not to be difficult, not to prove a point, but because she already knew where she was going and had known before she arrived. The way she had said "don't touch my envelope" and it had not been a threat and it had not been a plea, only a fact, arriving in the room with the certainty of something that had always been true. Cora had spent 6 weeks learning which doors to hold and which to guard. She thought she was beginning to understand the difference. She filed the incident report herself at the end of the shift, sitting at the break room table with a cup of tea she had forgotten to drink. She wrote the facts down in plain language and initialed every line. She noted the time of first contact, 6:17 p.m. She noted the time the apology was signed, 6:40 p.m. 23 minutes from the first dismissal to the document in Mrs. Voss's hand. She noted her own name under the witness line and read the entry back twice before she submitted it. She did not put that last figure in the report. She put it somewhere else, the part of her that would still be there on the mornings when it mattered, when the instinct came again and she would recognize it for what it was, the pull of something not sitting right, and the knowledge that 6 weeks or 30 years, that feeling is always worth the step forward. Margaret Voss stayed through the dancing. She left just before 10, the manila envelope under her arm, the garment bag over one shoulder, her heels quiet on the polished floor. She did not look back. She had no reason to. The Colston Group's board convened the formal review the following Thursday. The floor manager's suspension became permanent by the end of the session. The right of presence clause was added to the mandatory onboarding materials for every senior manager at every Colston property within the week. The ballroom at the Harwick Garden estate was as bright as it had ever been. It still is.